More injury news for the Houston Texans. More problems on the O-line. Not great with TJ Watt coming to town. Plus, Mike Tomlin has some interesting things to say about Texans present and past. Let's go inside the locker room.
Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about
Welcome to the locker room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 Central, Sports Radio 610 in the Odyssey app, which is where you can hear Bobby Slowick tomorrow. Bobby Slowick going to join the show exclusively after he goes to the podium. Another exclusive interview on In the Loop on a Thursday. Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator for the Texans, going to join the show. Please subscribe, like, ride along. It is the number one source for Texans content all around. This is the digital game, the radio game as well. Odyssey app and Sports Radio 610. We'll talk to Slowick tomorrow. But today we got some news, and we heard from one of my favorite coaches in the NFL and one of my favorite guys at the podium, Mike Tomlin. Let's start with the injury news. We said we needed to keep an eye on this. The Texans got some news on the offensive line. Josh Jones and Laramie Tunsil likely out on Sunday. This according to Aaron Wilson. Already pretty much had a sense that Laramie Tunsil was going to be out. Josh Jones, who knows? The tackle situation, not ideal. Not gonna lie to you, not ideal, especially with TJ Watt coming through. There is some good news though. Denzel Perryman also out. That's not the good news. But Jalen Petrie has returned to practice. So it looks like you'll have your starting safeties that a lot of people were excited about for the first time all season long. Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward in that backfield together at the same time. So you have that, but you're going to have to figure out how to block TJ Watt. I've looked at this game, and if I'm Will Anderson, we've seen athletes, we've seen coaches try to motivate themselves and try to look at everything as disrespect, and sometimes it helps them. All that people are talking about leading up to this game on Sunday is J.J. Watt. Rightfully so. Shout out to J.J. Watt for sending me that jersey once he retired. But people are talking about J.J. Watt. That's the past. People are talking about the present, but they're talking about T.J. Watt. And I think most media types, national media types, want to write the story J.J. Watt honored and brother propels team to victory over his former squad. Will Anderson is supposed to be somewhere in that company, in between where J.J. Watt and T.J. Watt are, based on what the Texans gave up for him. And early on in his career, we've seen some really good things from Will Anderson. What better time for Will Anderson to have a breakout game than J.J. Watt being honored, kind of grabbing the torch from him and telling T.J. Watt, hey, I know you got a lot of hype, but I'm here as well. One guy who seems to be a big fan of Will Anderson, Mike Tomlin, Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. He had a brief media availability conference call with the Houston media, and he had some interesting things to say about C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson, J.J. Watt, and then stuff got kind of weird when he was asked about D'Amico Ryans. We'll hear that. But I've always loved Mike Tomlin at the podium because it's really authentic. It's like the perfect balance of intensity and level-headedness. Like, it's not, sometimes you see coaches go up there and they're stiff. Sometimes you see coaches go up there and they're like too level-headed. He has the perfect balance, and it's intense. And I think there's a reason why Mike Tomlin, regardless of who's on the field, regardless of the situation, his team always plays hard for him. And I have nothing but respect for Mike Tomlin, and I really, really enjoy watching him at the podium. Now, he wasn't at the podium. This is going to look a little bit more like almost like a cross-examination. He's sitting at a desk. He's on a conference call with the media types, but he did have some interesting things to say. We will play that and react to it here in the locker room, starting with his thoughts on C.J. Stroud.
You know, I thought he was uniquely positioned to manage his circumstance. I think that when you're a quarterback at a program like Ohio State for multiple years, there's some experience there that kind of very similar to the experience that comes with being the guys in these circumstances. And so when I look at him, I see a guy that's probably mature beyond his years, not only in terms of the ball, but just the comfort of wearing what comes with being him. Kenny Pickett had that same unique experience because he was a multiple-year starter and grew and developed at Pitt. And I think that those profiles are probably much more predictable than maybe some of these one-year starters.
Come on, Mike. Don't bring Pickett into this. Come on, man. We don't. Pickett ain't C.J. Stroud. Come on, man. Come on, Mike. We don't need that.
Starters with upside and things of that nature. And so I don't know that I'm surprised at all at how well he's managing it, how productive he's been, and how quickly he's improving. I think he probably paid the price at the collegiate level to position himself to do those things.
Yeah, I agree, but still don't see the Pickett example. I think that's the one thing. Like, as bad as the Texans' offensive line is, I think Kenny Pickett is an absolute disaster. I think he is an unmitigated disaster. I think you're postponing the inevitable, and your ceiling is limited with Kenny Pickett. Here's more from Mike Tomlin.
Hey, Mike. This week, appreciate you doing it with us this week.
Damn, what is Brooks trying to do? Is Brooks trying to put together a modeling picture? What are we doing here? That's Brooks Cabina of the Houston Chronicle.
This week, J.J. Watt's going to honor here with the Texans. I'm curious, from your experience, what was the moment that he came to your attention and his impact on the NFL?
Man, I was at JJ's pro day, man. I met with him in a hotel suite in Madison, Wisconsin. He was no surprise to me or any of us. We went to his pro day the next day, man, and he had like a 39-inch vertical or whatever. I called a pilot and told him to warm the plane up. This guy would be gone by the time we were on the clock. I think we settled on Cam Hayward that year, did we not? And so it worked out pretty decent for us.
All right.
We got Cam Hayward, but we were in the market for elite defensive line talent that year. And so our search took me to Madison, Wisconsin. I was highly aware of his talents. I don't know in any way that I am surprised by what transpired over the course of his career. I thought so much of him, and I went back to Madison and got his little brother.
Yeah, did a good job.
All right, so since we're on the topic of elite defensive linemen, I wanted to ask you about the Texans rookie Will Anderson Jr. and what about him has stood out. Obviously, he was a highly touted player coming out, but he's been productive, in these first few games.
This is some good stuff, by the way. You don't want to miss this. This is a strong endorsement of Will Anderson. If you're a Texans fan, you're going to love what you hear from Tomlin here. This is really good stuff. B. Scott asking about Will Anderson. By the way, B. Scott is going to join the show tomorrow, as is Bobby Slowick. Don't forget. So it's a fun time tomorrow.
Especially you as the defensive coach, what stood out to you about Will Anderson?
His love and passion for the game, and his thirst for knowledge. And I got intimate understanding of that because I went to Tuscaloosa, man, the night before his pro day. I took a group of those guys out to dinner. I do every year in an effort to get to know them as people and spend informal time with them, get a chance to figure out what makes them tick, etc. Will called us and asked us to come to that dinner. I was not going to ask Will to come to that dinner because I knew his draft status. And I knew largely it would probably be a waste of his time. But here's a guy that loves football, wanted to come and talk football and spend time with us. That guy sat to my left at dinner all night, man, asked great questions. We had awesome conversation regarding the game and his place in it and his desire. I left that dinner knowing that, man, this guy's got an opportunity to be special because we all know about his tangible talents, height, weight, speed, measurable things of that nature, how much butt he kicked in Tuscaloosa. But when you sit down with a guy and you break bread with him and you listen to the questions that he asked and his love and passion for the game coming through in that meal, then that checks some intangible boxes. And so I don't know that I'm surprised at all by what I've seen from him to this point either.
Man, that is really impressive right there. That Will Anderson wanted to go pick the brain of Mike Tomlin. And it might seem like, well, big deal. Who wouldn't? I mean, there's a lot of prospects that wouldn't want to handle it. And obviously he was impressed by it. So that's, I mean, the Will Anderson, the more you hear about Will Anderson, the more you got to like it. Obviously Tomlin was going to get asked about D'Amico. Let's let's hear this portion of the media availability.
We'll go to Cole, Cody, and then Brian.
Hey, Coach, thank you so much for doing this. It's kind of a two-part question. Just back when you made the transition from being a defense coordinator at Minnesota to being a full-time head coach, what were some challenges that you remember throughout your first year that maybe potentially D'Amico is going through right now? And then when did you realize that D'Amico was going to be built to be able to become a head coach at the NFL level?
I will attempt to draw no comparisons. That was 17 years ago, man. That was 3 generations ago from a football player perspective. The trends in the game, the complexities of the game. Man, social media wasn't even a big thing when I got my job. And so D'Amico is very capable. Obviously, his resume speaks for itself. He needs no endorsement from me or parallels and things of that nature. And what was the second part of your question?
Throughout your time of knowing D'Amico and conversations or when watching him play, when did you realize that he was built to become a head coach at the NFL level?
To be honest with you, man, I hadn't had a lot of interactions with him other than respecting him as a player and saying hello and then getting to know him through his boss as a coach. I'm not positioned to answer that. I know his tape. And for us as coaches, our tape, like players, is our walking, talking, breathing resume. And his tape from his days as a coordinator in San Fran speaks for itself. He is deserving of his opportunity, and I'm excited about watching what he does with it.
Hey, Coach, along those same lines about D'Amico, what advice would you be able to share about sustaining the level of success that you have experienced in Pittsburgh?
None. These are 32 different corporations, man, that operate in a different way. I have my voice and perspective. If you're leading, you better follow yours. And I'm sure D'Amico has his. And so it's fruitless to me sometimes to kind of make those comparisons and storylines and things of that nature.
Okay. I feel you, Coach. We good?
Anyone else?
You got any more D'Amico?
Is it my turn to ask a question, Brian? I didn't know if it was my turn or not.
Guys,
Yeah, go ahead.
Enough time
Yeah.
for 2 more.
Okay. Well, Coach, what I want to ask you is, like I said, you've been in this league a long time. You sustained, like Cody said, the success, and you kept that franchise going with their winning ways. And I know you say you don't have any advice to offer to D'Amico, because everybody has their own path. But do you see any of the similarities as far as the groundwork being laid from what you did when you came in as a coach as to what he's doing right now?
I do not, to be honest with you, because I hadn't even looked at it that way. I've just been evaluating their tape, man, trying to figure out their playing personality, trying to put together a base plan here on a Wednesday to deal with our high volume things versus their high volume things, to look at personnel matchups and things of that nature and start to tee up situational football. I am not thinking about it that way in preparation on the front side of the week. I'm really not. I understand that there's probably a narrative here and so forth, but I'm just preparing to play the Houston Texans, man, and putting together a good plan and trying to figure out what they are. They're a new group that's challenging. There's not a lot to pull from in terms of 2022 personality things that maybe they are afforded because we've got more continuity. That's where my focus is. I'd be making stuff up if I answered some of these questions in the manner in which you guys are asking, to be honest with you.
All right. That's Mike Tomlin, Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. I love listening to him. And I thought he said some really good stuff there about Will Anderson, the JJ stuff, and the CJ Stroud stuff. The D'Amico, I don't think they knew each other that well and stuff. So he's got a lot of respect for D'Amico, and we'll see what happens. I got a lot of respect for Mike Tomlin. And the thing about this, you can lay this out with these teams, and this is why this coaching matchup is so intriguing, because Pittsburgh, you can talk about them being flawed. You can question the quarterback like I have. You can question the fact that, the weapons on offense aren't great. You can talk about other guys being injured, and you can talk about the Texans, and you can talk about the offensive line and all that. But the one thing we know about Mike Tomlin is his teams are always going to fight, and they are always going to fight for him. And a lot of times when you don't expect them to compete, you look up and damn, this team somehow made the playoffs. And we saw kind of a sign of that from DeMeco against Jacksonville. Now, was it a flash in the pan or not? It'll be interesting to see, but I'm looking forward to it. And I got nothing but love for Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, although I do think the Texans have the upper hand in the most important area, which is quarterback. Please subscribe, like, ride along. Appreciate everyone for coming through. This has been The Locker Room on YouTube. No matter what happens when it comes to this Texans stuff, though, we are all in it together. Bobby Slowick tomorrow on the show. Appreciate you.
Game in the headlock, localized every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top two and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for